Hi, I'm Mohsen, and I'm so excited to welcome you to The Seeking Soul. This podcast is a space where we explore topics like philosophy, spirituality, and literature, often from perspectives you may not have encountered before. As someone who grew up traveling, I've had the privilege of witnessing the deep similarities between cultures and people, even when mainstream narratives focus on what divides us. As an Iranian American, I've always felt to share the beauty, wisdom, and lessons from my Eastern heritage with my Western community, and vice versa. My hope is to be a bridge between these two worlds, fostering the sense of oneness and unity. With the help of AI, this dream feels more achievable than ever. Using documents and notes, I've provided with the link of the sources in the description. Along the way, you might encounter ideas that feel new, challenging, or even uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's the purpose of this space, to listen with empathy and approach every perspective with love and curiosity. Welcome to the Seeking Soul.
Welcome back to the sixth episode of Seeking Soul podcast. Since the previous episode was about starting something new, a new year, fresh start, I actually ran into a great book called Kaizen, which is a Japanese method for transforming habits. As you all know, and everyone deals with this issue of finding it very challenging to change our habits, especially as we grow older. I found this book very, very useful to help us change these habits in a step-by-step format over time. This book discusses the topic of self-improvement in areas like health, finance, work, home, and relationship, and I highly suggest you guys take a look at. I have the link of the PDF book in the descriptions, and once again, if you find this podcast useful, please do share it with your community and provide me with feedback. It would really mean a lot to me, and I love to improve this podcast every single episode. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Have you ever felt that kind of urge to change things up? To make a positive shift, learn something new, but then the thought of actually doing it, like the whole process, feels kind of overwhelming.
Like trying to revamp your entire life in one go.
Yeah, precisely. It can feel like, oof, where do I even begin? But guess what? Today's deep dive is all about a totally different approach. It's called Kaizen.
And it's really interesting. It's not just another, flashy self-help trend. The name itself gives a hint. Kaizen comes from Japan, and it's all about making these really small, subtle shifts to your habits.
We've got insights into its philosophy, its origins, how it's tied to Japanese culture, and even some super practical ways to weave Kaizen into your life, whether it's for your health, your work, your relationships, or even just making your home a more awesome space.
And tying it all back to you, our goal with this deep dive is pretty simple: to give you a really clear understanding of what Kaizen is all about, and, more importantly, to give you some concrete steps, little things you can start doing today that can build up to some serious, lasting change.
So, shall we jump in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So the heart of Kaizen, the core philosophy, is this idea of tiny, incremental changes. It's the total opposite of those crash diets or crazy workout routines that promise you the world, but often just leave you feeling exhausted and discouraged.
That comparison is actually really important. There's even this quote from Lao Tzu that sums it up perfectly. You can change your life by making lots of small steps. And it goes on to say, and I won't force you to walk 1,000 miles either. It's about taking it slow and steady, making it sustainable.
And what I love about it is that it feels so doable. You don't need fancy equipment or total lifestyle makeover. One of the sources even mentioned that all you really need to get started is like a pen and a notepad. You can make Kaizen fit your own life, your own pace, your own goals, not some generic plan that doesn't quite work for you.
That brings up a really interesting question. Why do these tiny tweaks actually work? A big part of it has to do with how it taps into how we form habits. There's a psychologist mentioned in the material you provided, Gardner, and he makes this fascinating point. He says, habitual behaviors can happen even when we don't feel like doing them. And get this, sometimes even when we really don't want to do them.
Oh, that's so true. It's like making your bed in the morning. You just do it automatically, even if you're tired or in a rush. And Kaizen is smart because it uses this by making those first steps super tiny It kind of bypasses that resistance we often feel when we try to change big things all at once. It's a much gentler, more sustainable way to build those habits without feeling like you're constantly battling yourself.
Exactly. And because the changes are so small, you're basically setting yourself up for constant wins, even if they seem small at first. And that creates this positive feedback loop. Your sources mention this amazing story about the British cycling team, led by Sir Dave Brailsford. Their approach wasn't about overnight transformations. It was about finding tiny areas for improvement, what they called marginal gains, in everything they did.
And this is where it gets really cool. They weren't aiming for perfection right away. They were super meticulous about finding these little 1% improvements. It could be the aerodynamics of the bikes, the riders' diets, even the way they took care of the equipment.
And those tiny improvements, they didn't just add up bit by bit in terms of performance. They created what they called a contagious enthusiasm for change. The point wasn't just about those marginal gains themselves, but how those little victories fueled this positive cycle. It proved that even the smallest improvements can kickstart this incredible momentum. And that's a key principle for our own journeys with Kaizen.
Absolutely. So we've got the whole small is mighty philosophy. But where did this idea come from? What are the historical roots of Kaizen?
It's fascinating, actually. The word Kaizen itself is Japanese. It just means improvement. It can refer to little changes or big ones, one-time fixes, or something ongoing. You even see it used in martial arts to describe that really careful, gradual way they perfect a technique.
Right, so the idea itself is kind of woven into Japanese culture already. But the way we're talking about it today, this approach to business and personal growth, that has this really surprising backstory. One of our sources even called it an East meets West story.
Spot on. The basic ideas actually originated in the U.S. during World War II. They started a program called Training Within Industries, or TWI. The goal was to boost production as quickly as possible, especially because so many men were away fighting. A core part of TWI was encouraging the workers to suggest their own ideas for improvements, and it worked amazingly well.
So the seeds of continuous improvement were planted in America, but it was in Japan where they really took root and flourished.
Exactly. After World War II, Japan's economy was devastated. The U.S. wanted to help rebuild the country and create a stable ally, so they sent over management consultants, including a guy named William Edwards Deming. He was really influential. The Japanese loved this idea of continuous improvement. They took it and ran with it, and they gave it the name Kaizen, meaning good change or improvement.
And it's thought to be a big reason why Japanese companies did so incredibly well in the second half of the 20th century. I'm talking about giants like Toyota, right?
Absolutely. The Toyota way became like the poster child for Kaizen in action. They were all about lean processes, eliminating waste, which they call muda, and constantly improving quality. And here's the important bit. They really encouraged every worker to suggest improvements. It wasn't just the bosses calling the shots. It was a culture of everyone pitching in.
And from those factories, Kaizen spread out into the world, didn't it?
It did. It's not just for manufacturing anymore. The core idea, making small, ongoing improvements, has been adopted by all sorts of fields, healthcare, government agencies, even psychotherapy. It's a really versatile idea.
Okay, so we've covered the philosophy and the history. Let's get into something super fascinating. How Japanese culture itself has influenced Kaizen. And one concept that kept popping up was uchisodo. Can you explain that?
Sure. So uchi basically means inside or home, and sodo means outside. It's about the difference between your in-groups, like your family, close friends, people you work with, and your out-groups, like clients, customers, visitors, even people from outside Japan.
And this isn't just some casual thing, is it? It really affects how people behave and even the language they use.
Right. When a Japanese person interacts with someone from an out-group, they're very formal and respectful. It's all about honoring the sodo group. But when they talk about their in-group to someone from outside, they use more humble language. It's this subtle system that affects everything from gift-giving etiquette to how customers are treated in stores and restaurants.
It sounds like it creates a strong sense of order and politeness. But one of the sources mentioned that it can also be tough for people from outside these established groups to fully integrate.
Yeah, that's a great point. While the Uchi-Sodo system is great for creating strong bonds within groups and being welcoming to visitors, it can also create a sense of distance for people who aren't already part of an in-group. One source even talked about a British person who lived in Tokyo for 15 years, spoke fluent Japanese, was even married to a Japanese person, but still sometimes felt like an outsider in certain situations. But to be fair, the younger generations in Japan are starting to loosen up on those traditional boundaries a bit.
It's like this ongoing dance between deep-rooted traditions and the influence of a more globalized world. And speaking of that blend, the sources talked about this unique mix of Western and traditional culture in Japan.
Definitely. You can find American-style coffee shops everywhere, but there's still a huge appreciation for traditional crafts and art forms. Teenagers might be wearing kimonos one day and Nike trainers the next. You even see it in homes where you have modern apartments and more traditional tatami rooms with futons. It's often about what's practical for the space.
And this unique blend, the social structures, the focus on design, the sources suggest it has something to do with Japan's long period of isolation before 1868, a policy called Sakoku.
For over 2 centuries, Japan intentionally limited contact with the outside world. That allowed their culture, their social hierarchies, and their design sensibilities to develop in their own unique way. There was some limited trade, mainly with the Dutch, which introduced a few Western ideas, but for most Japanese people, there wasn't much exposure to the wider world.
And then with the Meiji Restoration, everything opened up and there was this huge exchange of influences, wasn't there? The West became obsessed with the Japanese art. That's where the Japanism movement came from. And Japan adopted Western concepts like democracy, a modern police force, and baseball.
Right. That historical context is really important for understanding the background against which Kaizen developed. It's a society that values refinement, attention to detail, and has a very strong sense of its own cultural identity.
And we can't talk about Japanese culture without mentioning the proverbs and philosophical ideas, right? The sources were full of these little gems of wisdom that seemed to perfectly fit with the principles of Kaizen.
Totally. Proverbs like, with many little strokes, a large tree is felled. That perfectly captures the power of consistent small effort. Or fall 7 times, stand up 8, which is all about resilience and perseverance, and those are essential for continuous improvement. Even if dust piles up, it becomes a mountain, shows how seemingly insignificant actions can add up over time.
And then there's Shinshin Ichinyo, the idea of the body and mind as one. How does that relate to Kaizen?
That concept really highlights the holistic view that's common in Japanese thought. It says that your physical and mental well-being are deeply connected. So Kaizen isn't just about changing your outward habits, it's also about finding a sense of inner peace and balance through those gradual mindful adjustments.
It all ties together so beautifully. Okay, so let's get to the part that I know you, our listener, are really interested in. How can we actually use Kaizen in our own lives? What are some practical things we can start doing?
The sources you provided had loads of great advice. The first step, the one that comes up again and again, is self-reflection. Take some time to create what one source called an inventory of areas in your life where you'd like to see positive change work, money, your home, relationships, new skills you want to learn. It's not just about fixing what you don't like, but also about thinking about exciting new possibilities.
Right, so it's not just about problem solving, it's about growing and embracing new things. And once you've identified those areas, what's next in the Kaizen approach?
Then comes the core of Kaizen, setting small, achievable, short-term steps. Make those first actions so tiny that they feel almost ridiculously easy to do. The sources gave some great examples. Adding just 1 extra fruit or vegetable to your meals each day, doing 5 minutes of meditation. These aren't huge commitments. They're just little nudges in the right direction. Remember, you don't have to tackle everything at once. Pick one small thing and start with a step that feels super easy.
And it's important to have both those little actions and a bigger long-term vision, right? To keep yourself focused on why you're making these changes in the first place. I love the suggestion of using new, positive challenges to distract yourself from unwanted habits. So instead of automatically scrolling through social media, maybe spend a minute on a language learning app.
That's a smart way to shift your focus. And setting time-bound goals can be really helpful too. So instead of just saying, I want to do more yoga, try something like, I'll go to a yoga class every other week. That makes it more concrete. And tracking your progress is really important. The sources were big on journaling, especially bullet journaling, as a way to keep track of goals, habits, even moments of gratitude. It's amazing how quickly those tiny changes can add up. Again, it's about finding that one small step that works for you.
It's like creating a record of your wins, which must be really motivating. Speaking of motivation, one big obstacle to change is that negativity bias our brains have. We often focus more on what we might lose than on what we might gain.
Absolutely. Our brains are hardwired to look out for threats. But Kaizen's gradual approach helps to get around that fear of failure that often comes with trying to make big changes all at once. Because those first steps are so small and doable, the risk feels much lower, and the focus is always on being kind and patient with yourself throughout the process.
Okay, let's get specific. The sources were packed with examples of how to use Kaizen in different areas of life. Let's start with health and well-being.
When it comes to health, it's all about those small, easy to integrate changes. So instead of deciding to run a marathon tomorrow, maybe the first step is just looking into local running groups. Or if you hate gyms, explore other ways to be active until you find something you actually enjoy. Even mixing up your workouts can help. With food, it could be as simple as mindfully eating just one thing, slowly cutting back on sugar, or trying one vegetarian meal a week.
And what about sleep, which so many of us struggle with?
The sources suggested keeping a sleep diary for a week to get a better picture of your sleep patterns. Then try adding just one little bedtime ritual, maybe changing into comfy clothes when you get home, putting your phone away an hour before bed, or even just 5 minutes of meditation. Even setting your alarm 5 minutes earlier can make a difference in how rushed you feel.
What about the whole digital overload thing? How can Kaizen help with a digital detox?
A good starting point is simply tracking how much you use your phone for a day or two. Then maybe try a digital detox app, but just for one day. Or try leaving your phone alone for an hour. Rearrange your apps so social media isn't the first thing you see. Turn off unnecessary notifications, even just for a day. Even being more mindful at mealtimes by putting your phone away can make a difference.
And it's not just about our physical habits, right?
Yeah.
Kaizen can be really powerful for boosting self-esteem too.
Totally. It could be about practicing self-compassion, challenging those negative thoughts when they pop up, even creating a compliments folder at work where you save nice things people say about you. It's those little things you do consistently to build a more positive inner voice.
How about work and careers? That's a big source of stress for a lot of people.
Start with small decluttering sessions in your workspace. Maybe spend 5 minutes a week clearing out one drawer. Make your commute more enjoyable with noise-canceling headphones or an audiobook. Take mindful breaks during the day, even just 5 minutes for some meditation. Improve your email habits by checking it less often and setting specific times to deal with emails. For your long-term career, take some time to think about the pros and cons of your current job. Talk to people in fields that interest you, and look into training you can do in the evenings or on weekends.
What about for people who are studying or learning new things?
Focus on finding study methods that work best for you. Take breaks. And the key Kaizen principle here is to do a little bit every day, rather than cramming at the last minute.
Now let's talk money. That's another area where small, consistent changes can really make a difference over time.
Absolutely. Start by tracking your spending for a week or a month so you really know where your money is going. Make little changes around the house to save energy. Look into negotiating better deals for things like your phone or internet plan. Be more mindful when you shop. Always use a list and think twice before impulse buys. Make checking your bank balance a regular habit. Even simple reminders like sticking a note to your wallet can help you pause before spending. And for saving, think about setting up a separate savings account and having a small amount transferred automatically. There are tons of helpful savings apps out there too.
How about our homes? They can have such a big impact on how we feel overall.
Make a list of little improvements you want to make around your house and try to tackle one each day or weekend. Focus on decluttering one area at a time, your closet, a bookshelf, even just a drawer. Try to recycle things you don't need anymore. Treat your home like you're expecting a guest you really love. Bring some nature inside. Find ways to improve your storage. It's all about making your space more peaceful and functional through small, consistent effort.
And relationships. Those are so vital for our happiness and support.
Think about doing a relationship inventory. Identify the relationships that are most important to you or maybe need some extra attention. Focus on making a conscious effort to improve just 1 or 2 relationships at a time. Talk openly and honestly. Look for communities and groups that share your interests. Reach out to people in your local community. When dealing with difficult relationships, address issues bit by bit. Be willing to apologize when you need to, and know when it's healthier to step back from relationships that are constantly draining. Remember that advice. Seek out radiators, not drains.
Finally, what about those new challenges or hobbies we've always wanted to try?
Start by thinking about why you want to pursue that particular hobby. Think back to things you were passionate about as a kid. Visit shops or studios that relate to that hobby that can really spark your interest. Consider doing things that involve creating something, not just consuming. Pick activities that truly help you relax and recharge. Start super small. Watch a beginner's video, do some basic research. Whether it's learning an instrument, trying arts and crafts, experimenting with cooking, even something like Shinrin-yoku, which is like forest bathing, The key is to just start somewhere.
Wow, that's such a comprehensive look at how to apply Kaizen. It really shows how versatile it is.
And the best part is, as we've been saying, you don't have to do everything at once. Remember the main idea. Small, manageable steps. Just pick one thing that really speaks to you and figure out the absolute smallest action you can take in that direction today.
So to wrap it all up, Kaizen offers this incredible yet gentle way to make real, lasting changes in your life. It's not about those big, unsustainable overhauls that usually lead to burnout. It's about those small, consistent efforts that add up over time.
Exactly. It's about constant improvement, but in a way that's really personal and adaptable to your own needs and situation. There's no one right way to do it. It's about figuring out what works best for you and building from there one little step at a time.
So here's what we want you to do, dear listener. After this deep dive is over, think about one thing we talked about that sparked your interest, and then ask yourself, what's the smallest, easiest thing I could do right now to move in that direction?
And that leads us to one final thought for you to ponder. How might embracing this idea of small, continuous improvement, how might that change not only your habits, but also your whole outlook on challenges and your ability to grow? Take some time to think about those specific Kaizen techniques we talked about. Which of those small strokes might you start using today?
Amazing food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Kaizen. We'll see you on our next exploration.